mechanics, because that will immediately allow us to connect it to the density matrix formulation of quantum mechanics. And once we have the density matrix formulation of quantum mechanics, we want to see, the time evolution of the density matrix for some arbitrary time dependent potential, given that we will like to use this framework to solve the problem that we have already solved in the wave function picture, right? The problem of optical transitions, absorption, and maybe even nonlinear processes, etc. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the review of quantum mechanics, etc. And I just started by describing that, the main object, or yeah, the main object in quantum mechanics is this wave function, and any quantum mechanical state can be designated by this wave function, etc., which has the property that there's the equation which governs its dynamics, the Schrodinger equation, and all other physical observables can be calculated in terms of this psi, let's say. No? So we have a given state S, the corresponding wave function is psi S, and given psi S, you can calculate any physical observable, and the dynamics of psi s is governed by this particular equation, which is well known as Schrodinger equation. So ih dou psi by dou t is h acting on psi s, where h is h naught plus vt, etc. H naught is the time independent Hamiltonian in this notation, and Vt will be the time dependent Hamiltonian. And we can keep in the background of our head that H naught corresponds to, let's say, hydrogen atom kind of a Hamiltonian, and Vt can arise from light matter interaction, the way we did in the wave function picture also. Okay. Okay. And here, so since you are familiar with quantum mechanics, let me just make a few more comments. So psi s, r, and t, when I write this, this is like a analytical function in real space and real time. Okay. The function itself may be complex, the psi s itself may be complex, but r and t are both real, number one. And this is writing in the what is called the position basis. Okay. Okay. And h here in that notation is a differential operator. No. So for example, h would be for Schrodinger equation uh, h square by 2m dou x2 plus whatever, etc., some v, spatially dependent v, etc., right? So that's a differential operator. Okay, the whole thing I can write in a more abstract notation, etc., but let's just continue with this real space picture. Okay, I already said that H naught is a free atom Hamiltonian, just for keep in the mind, and Vt can be time dependent perturbation. And we'll try to keep this notation as general as possible till the last moment, where we will use explicit form of V and H naught, etc. Okay. Okay. And the eigenstates of, so yeah, so another important, the most important point is if H is a Hermitian operator, right? And if you have done some mathematical physics, let's say, no, then you know from the theory of Sturm-Liouville equations, etc., that all solutions of H naught, no, form a complete basis set. Okay, and a complete basis set is such that in terms of which we can expand any other function, right? So more like a Fourier series, let's say, where the sine kxt and cos kxt, etc., can be the full basis set, and I can expand any other function in terms of those, basically, right? So these form a complete basis set, and psi s can be expressed in terms of that basis set. So what do we mean by that? Is suppose h naught had some eigenfunctions phi n, en. So h naught phi n is equal to en phi n r, etc., where n denotes the nth energy state and phi n is the nth wave function, etc., of h naught. Then psi s, the s state, you can expand in terms of some time dependent coefficients times this phi n of r. No? So this we already did in the previous lectures, etc. And this you can do in two ways, etc. So the way I have written, all the time dependence is in Cn s of t, and phi n is just time independent. I think the way we wrote in the class earlier, so we separated CNST also in two parts, just as a function, and I took out the e to the power minus I ent by h dependence separately, etc. So here it can be inside it. Okay, so just a notational thing, nothing else. And since phi n form a complete basis, so this is the statement of orthogonality. and also can show that completeness basically. Okay, that phi n and phi m. So if I take phi n star scalar product with phi m dr, then that will give me a delta mn, right? And if you have done some mathematical physics, then you know that this is one particular example of defining scalar products where the weight function is 1. Okay, and more general scalar products can be defined with some arbitrary weight factor. So here I can have a wx here, basically wr, let's say. Okay, okay. But for Hermitian operators, particularly the Schrodinger equation, etc., this is fine. So phi n, phi m are orthogonal to each other, etc. Okay. Now in this expansion, where the S state was one of the, let's say, eigenstate of the full Hamiltonian, perturbed Hamiltonian, I can write in terms of the eigenstates of the unperturbed Hamiltonian H naught by using this Cn, and this coefficient Cn are just called the probability amplitude that the atom or whatever system we had uh, in time t is in the energy eigenstate n, basically. So in state S is in the energy eigenstate n of the time independent Hamiltonian, basically. Okay. Okay. So is this clear, or any questions till now? Okay. So if this is clear, then let's proceed. The time evolution of psi s, which is the full Hamiltonian solution, let's say, can be completely specified by the time evolution of these coefficients, etc. And the way to see this is that I can just write down the full Schrodinger equation, and then I substitute the psi s as an expansion of Cn's, etc. And Cn was the only time dependent thing, so I get this equation, which is labeled as 1. So IH sum over n d Cns by dt phi n is equal to so Cns, which was a number, times h of phi n, and h of phi n is nothing but En and phi n, basically. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then I can do the following. So I can multiply on the left by phi m star, basically. Okay. So I will use the orthogonality relation to get rid of the phi n on the left hand side and the summation on the left hand side. That's all I'll do. Okay. So if I do that, so this we had already done in an earlier class. So if I do that, then on the left hand side, I can use phi m star phi n is equal to delta mn integral. And on the right hand side, I will end up with an expression which will look like phi m r h phi n, basically. Right. And this is important to understand that h is now the full Hamiltonian. So h has a v also. Right. So this product may not give me a number. Well, it will give me a number, but it will depend on both m and n states. So this the first index here is missing, which is m. So phi m star h phi n gives me a number h mn. So this is the full interaction Hamiltonian H0 plus V sandwiched between phi m and phi n, which gives me this number. Okay. And using this, I can go back to my equation 1 and it will give me this equation. So IH dou by dou T of Cm T is HMN. So I just brought down this number times Cn of T. Okay. Okay. So this is interesting. I now had a full, let's say, basis set phi m, phi n, etc., in terms of which I can write down this time dependence of this CMs, basically, right? So these are like, matrix equation, coupled matrix equation. So on the left hand side, I can write IH dot T, and the CM I have just written as a column vector, just to show that it is a coupled matrix equation. So C1, C2, C3, etc. And HMN is nothing but a full matrix, H11, H12, H13, and going on below also, etc. Times this product HMN times Cn, I can write as a matrix times a column vector product, basically. So it's almost like a matrix equation. Okay. So any set of coupled equations, I can coupled linear equations, I can write as a matrix equation. Okay. This is just one example of that. Okay. So now this was about the wave function and the time evolution of the wave function, let's say. So once I use this equation, I can solve it numerically on a computer or maybe analytically for some cases, etc. I can decide what are the C1, C2s, etc. Once I have the C1, C2s, etc., I can go back and solve for the full psi. Once I have the psi now, then I should ask what now, right? Okay. Then the major important idea of whole quantum mechanics is that, I had this psi, etc., and any physical observable, any experimentally measurable quantity can be written in terms of this psi by using a expectation value of a Hermitian operator. Okay. So all physical observables are expressed as a Hermitian operator. So in our notation currently, they are all differential operators. Hermitian operator. Expectation value, if I take of the operator A, then introducing a new notation. So the brackets A, I will write as, expectation between psi s, A psi s, which is just the scalar product, sort of generalized scalar product with the operator in between, basically. Okay. And the angular bracket just means quantum mechanical average. And this converts the operator into a number, because physically measurable quantity has to be a number, right? A real complex number, both are allowed, but actually, so if it's a Hermitian operator, then a real number, basically. Okay. Okay. So a word on this notation, which you are all familiar with from quantum mechanics, etc. So A I can write in terms of sandwiched between psi s, let's say, with this L angle and bar, and between this R angle, psi s and bar, etc. So the left side is generally called a bra, the right side is generally called a ket, and this is a compact notation which was introduced by Dirac, etc. It's also called Dirac notation, and the meaning is just that it is integral over d3r psi s star a psi s, nothing else, nothing more, nothing less, basically. Okay. And psi s, sometimes we will just skip the psi and we will also write as s, state, basically. Okay, without referring to the real state, eigenstate explicitly, let's say. Okay, so the interchangeably we can write s is equal to psi s. Okay. Okay, so that's important. So that's almost my summary of quantum mechanics, etc. Okay, just one more thing left. So we had this psi s, and psi s we had written in terms of this Cm, Cns, etc. So how do I write the expectation value of operator in terms of this Cm, Cn, etc. So A was psi s, A psi s. If I just substitute this expansion of psi s here, then I'll be left with terms like this. So sum over, let's say, m, Cm star, phi m a, phi n, Cn s. And in writing this, I have missed sum over n here. Okay, so there should be a sum. So this sum is over both m and n, actually. Okay, so there's an n missing here in this sum. Okay, and the same n is also missing here in this sum. Okay, so this sum over mn. I'm just left with this quantity CMS star CNS times this expectation value of A between these two wave functions, etc., which is just, let me denote from the Hamiltonian notation, AMN. Okay, so AMN is explicitly defined as just this. So dr phi m star A phi, basically. Okay. Okay. And now that we had equations to solve for the time dependence of Cm and Cn, etc. So if I have the time dependence, then any expectation value of A operator I can calculate by calculating this A matrix and then just taking this, basically. Okay. And the whole takeaway from this calculation is that for any physical quantity, terms like this Cm S star, CNS, etc., will sort of appear naturally, right? Because any expectation value of an operator is, two wave functions. So for each wave function, I'll get one time dependent coefficient. For another wave function, I'll get another time dependent. So I'll always get time dependent coefficients product, etc., which appear naturally. And next, we will go to density matrix. We will find that it will appear as natural in terms of these coefficients we will be able to write. Okay. So questions here. So that's the first part of today's lecture, review of quantum mechanics. And this must be all familiar to you, etc. But if you have any question, let's say, any general question on quantum mechanics that you have been holding back, I am a reasonably okay person to ask. Okay, so if there are no questions, then let's proceed. Okay, so I'm not able to view the participants. Okay, so if there are no questions, then let's proceed basically. Okay. So just give me a minute. Yeah, okay. So let's proceed basically. Okay. Okay. So this was a quick review of quantum mechanics, etc. Right. So since you didn't ask me any question, which I was anticipating, so I have some question basically, right? So my question is, what are the problems with this approach that we just came up with? Okay, and now I need some answers. So is there any problem with this approach? So you assumed a single hydrogen atom and you wanted to solve for the wave functions, etc., quantum mechanics of that. Any problem with that? Nitesh, any problem?
Yes, sir.
What is the problem? Yeah.
This equation is not relativistically invariant. So,
Okay. So if my atoms are traveling at the velocity of light, then this equation is invalid. Of course, that is a problem. Okay. Yeah.
and another problem is that we can solve it completely for only few problems. I mean, uh, first hydrogen atom, second harmonic oscillator. So we
Yeah.
can't solve it completely for any problem.
Okay. So numerically, say I can still solve matlab, right? Then what is the problem?
Sir, there are infinitely many states to which we can find solutions. So, like there will be too many A M terms and like
Okay. So for
matrix
large,
terms.
so for large system, this approach is not feasible. That's what you're saying, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What else? What about temperature? This for zero temperature, finite temperature. And then what about experiments? Can I do experiments on a single atom? Very, very difficult. Right? Okay. So I will list a few problems basically, right? Okay. So one is that the state S or psi S may not be known exactly. Okay. I will describe what I mean when I say that, it may not be known exactly. Okay. So just give me a minute. Then whatever we did till now was all completely zero temperature, only quantum mechanics, etc., no thermal fluctuations, etc. Right? We live on Earth, so even in the best of labs, I cannot go to zero temperature. Okay, the lowest temperature that I can go to is 10 to the power minus 6 of a Kelvin, maybe, and that is only in one or two labs in the world. Okay, let's say IIT Kanpur, what is the lowest I can go to? IIT Kanpur, maybe lowest I can go to is, something like 1 Kelvin. Okay, I cannot go below zero, etc. Okay, and a lot of thermal fluctuations happen at even at that temperature. Okay, and most of the labs or for demonstration, your lab, etc. Let's say your BSc or MSc labs, I'll do experiments at liquid nitrogen. No, that is like minus 78. Uh, so liquid nitrogen, what is the boiling point? Somebody help. Okay, so that is like minus 78 degree or roughly 200 Kelvin, actually. Okay, so that's a very high temperature considering a lot of quantum effects and the amount of broadening that we are sort of after, etc. Okay, but these are not the only two problems. The major problem is that the last two, etc., that the system may be coupled to an environment. Okay, which is explicitly not included in the calculation. So even if I found a single hydrogen atom, etc., I'll do experiments. But the single hydrogen atom, I will probably have a single hydrogen atom trapped in a sort of a optical beam, very complex optical trap, etc. So that hydrogen atom will also be interacting with a lot of dynamics happening because of this trap, etc. Okay, and those I will have never included in my calculation, etc. So that's a huge problem. Okay, then even bigger problem, that suppose I had isolated system also, etc. Then I will almost always do experiment on sort of a collection of hydrogen atoms, okay, and never on a single hydrogen atom. Okay, so I am always dealing with sort of ensembles rather than a single atom system. Okay, and these are problems which are uh, let's say even bigger than worrying about relativistic effects, etc., which I can show that for a single hydrogen atom they are sort of not important till some decimal points, let's say. Right, so the energy levels, I can show that the hydrogen atom already gives me energy levels which are accurate to, let's say, 3 or 4 orders of magnitude, without including the relativistic corrections. Okay, yeah. So questions on the last 2 points and the thermal. The thermal fluctuations, so finite temperature you have to build into the calculation. The system may be coupled to the environment. So, my system is actually only a sub part of a larger subsystem, and the larger subsystem I have not even included in my calculation. That is most important. And I will always do experiments in sense of ensembles. So I'll always have to do statistical analysis of what I observe. Okay. So these are the important things. And these are the important questions which necessitate the need to go beyond this. Okay. So I need to go beyond these, etc. And that is the need for a slightly more evolved framework. And this slightly more evolved framework is what we'll call as the density matrix formulation, let's say. Okay. And the advantages are that it includes many particle systems. Okay, so we consider just a single particle system, one electron, hydrogen atom, etc. If there are multiple electrons, etc., or multiple photons also, then I need to worry a bit about quantum statistics, etc., so that I can inbuilt into it. So that we have not even discussed till now. Okay, it can include and take care of the coupling to the environment. And most of the times this is done in a sort of a phenomenological way, etc. We will see an example in the next lecture, not today. And then it is built to include thermal fluctuations or finite temperature effects in the calculation, etc. So this is what enables this to go beyond quantum mechanics. So this is quantum mechanics, but it includes quantum statistics, coupling to the environment, and finite temperature effects, basically. Okay, so it includes quantum statistics, which in some sense already includes the temperature, etc. And it also includes coupling to the environment, though it will be done phenomenologically a bit. Okay. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. So that's our motivation to go to the next framework of density matrix, etc. Okay. So let's go quickly. Okay. Okay. So we just showed, before we came to the density matrix, that any expectation value of this A operator, I can write in this particular form, right? So A is sum over Mn, CMS star, CNS times this quantity AMN, right? Where AMN is A sandwich between these two states, basically. Okay. Okay. And now the question is, can this state S be precisely known? No? This was one of my earlier questions, actually. Okay, and this is an example where you cannot do this, right? So suppose you have a collection of atoms in an atomic cloud, etc., where the atoms can collide with each other, etc., right? So each collision involves, for example, change in the wave function. So each scattering will lead to new scattering states, and that is like change in the wave function of the atom, right? That is number one. And suppose I have a collection of 10 to the power 6 atoms. That is like the, the most dilute, one of the most dilute collection of atomic gases that we can make experimentally with current state of the art technologies, let's say. Right. Then even in those, matlab, is it possible to keep track of all the phases in all the collisions, etc. Right. So how long will the experiment proceed? And during that experiment, I want to keep track of all the phases, etc. Okay. And even that is very, very difficult, because suppose I do an experiment over the length scale, time scale of 10 to the power minus 6 seconds, let's say microsecond. Okay. Uh, Electron dynamics or atomic dynamics is happening at the scale of femtoseconds at least, right? So I need to have at least 10 to the power 9 time evolution steps for 10 to the power 6 atoms, right? So 10 to the power 6 into 10 to the power 9 is 10 to the power 15 computations at the least, right? Even that is very, very difficult to do with state of the art computers today, okay? Because our computing power is like 10 to the power 6, no? So hertz, gigahertz, so 10 to the power 9, let's say, per second, right? So 10 to the power 9 seconds, and then I have to give it 10 to the power 6 seconds more, okay? So very, very hard calculation to do, okay? And this is one of the simplest examples, actually, okay? But even more important question is, suppose that I actually started from some initial ground state, known ground state wave functions, etc., and I actually did this simulation physically, okay, using some supercomputer or something, etc., for my system. Even then, is it useful? Because I may not have known the initial state very precisely, right? I do not know the coupling to the environments, etc., right? Then there are always thermal fluctuations, etc. I may or may not have included some kind of other effects, etc. Okay. So the major point that I am trying to make here is that, microscopic theories are very, very good, but always they may not be useful for macroscopic objects. Okay. So macroscopic theories we need to always build, which is like coarse grained version of the microscopic theories. So starting from, for example, quantum electrodynamics, we can build Maxwell's equation, and Maxwell's equations may be more useful for solving, light matter interaction properties in metals and things like that. Okay, and that is also why macroscopic theories were historically first developed, because they are more closer to what we see in nature and so on. And current state of the art microscopic theories are built around mostly the limits of our experimental capability. So as our experimental capability will keep increasing, we go beyond femtosecond, we go to attosecond, etc. Then we will need to develop new theories even beyond quantum mechanics. Maybe, I do not know the answer. Okay, that's the major point. Okay, okay. So what is the solution here, basically? Okay, and the solution I'm asking for the first particular question, let's say, that the state S may not be precisely known of the system. Okay, and all the other things will actually just lead to that problem, that the state S of the system may not be precisely known, and it can only be known in a statistical sense. Okay, okay. So if that is a solution problem, then the immediate way you can attack this is, let's assume that even though the precise state S is unknown, we can know the probability that the system is in state S. Okay, and this probability we will have some model to calculate, etc. We do not know the details right now. Okay, but we can always assume that I do not know the state S precisely, but I can always, by some means calculate the probability of the system being in this state S. And this probability will include, for example, my coupling to the environment in some way, my temperature dependence, ensemble averaging, etc. Okay, okay, that is number one. But it is very important to understand that this probability is a number, or it's a classical probability, right? That my system will be in state S with this probability, and it's not a quantum mechanical probability. Meaning I will not have a Schrodinger equation for this probability. I'll have some other means of calculating this. Okay, so this is very important. And once I have this probability, then I can define the density matrix. Let's say one element of the density matrix. So density, the name itself is matrix. So it's a matrix. And I defined one element of the density matrix, rho mn, as this quantity which we had calculated, CMS, CNS product, right? But now we convolute it with the probability of finding the state system in state S, basically. Okay. And another way to write this is CMCN. Now there is no S because S is averaged over, etc. So bar. Okay. So the average over S, which is precisely what this PS sum over S does, or this bar implies sort of an ensemble average. So the state, so one atom may be in S, another atom may be in, S prime, and so on, etc. So I am doing sort of an ensemble average. Okay. And that's what the density matrix formulation does. It does the ensemble average. Okay. Okay. That is number one. Number two is key. There's a notation of M and N. So till now we would have forgotten the origin. So just to remind that M and N run over all the eigenstates of the full basis set, right? Which arose from the known Hamiltonian H naught. Okay. Okay. And then another reminder that remember S by itself was the eigenstate of the interacting Hamiltonian H0 plus Vt, etc., which included the eigenstates, etc., right? Okay. So S is different from Mn. Mn and all the states corresponding to Mn are known. I can easily calculate all the matrices of operators in that notation, Mn, etc. And within that notation, still I'll have some probability of having the state S, and that is what defines this rho Mn. Okay. Okay. So till now I've just defined it. It is not useful as of now, right? Okay. But before I go to the usefulness, etc., just one comment on what this signifies, etc. So the diagonal element of the density matrix will give me the probability that the system is an energy eigenstate n, actually. Okay. So diagonal element rho nn, meaning Cm is also n and Cn is also n, then that is just like the probability amplitude, so mod squared. So actually the probability that the system is in the state n. Okay. Okay. And then you can ask me more severe question that what is the off diagonal component of this density matrix rho mn signify? No. Okay. So rho mn is generally called either the off diagonal components of the density matrix, or in optics language they are also called coherence. Okay, so it's important to remember rho mn off diagonal elements are coherence, and they're a bit abstract. Okay, and they denote more precisely that the system can be in a coherent superposition of mn and states, both, basically. So coherent superposition is very important, because if this was an incoherent superposition, then it will not appear in the density matrix. Okay. And coherent superposition, I mean, I do not know precisely if the atom is in state M or in state N, and a measurement will make it collapse, and the collapse probability will depend on this off diagonal elements, rho mn, etc. also. Okay. And these off diagonal elements turn out to be very, very useful for optical experiments, and can be related to the dipole of the atom in presence of an external electric field. Okay, so this is very, very important. Okay, so there should be questions now here. We have introduced a new concept, density matrix, motivated, etc. Some basic stuff, but there should definitely be questions before we proceed further about why I defined this, how it will be useful.
Hello, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Anurag, yeah.
So you mentioned that the high A states are not exactly known. So can we precisely know the states? The number CMS and CNS?
No. I cannot. I want to know them. That is the whole point. Okay, I will have a way of calculating these numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is also a rho S.
Yeah. So rho S also I do not know precisely right now. Yeah. But I will have some other way of knowing that rho S.
Oh, okay.
Right now I do not know, because I see this calculation I'll do then for a specific model. Right. Once I have the model, then I will tell you what is the motivation behind rho S. Okay. But you have to agree to an idea that I have an ensemble of atoms, and I do not know how many of them are in the S state and S prime state, etc. So I can think of, as a probability, rho S as, this is the fraction of atoms out of the total, which will be in the state S. Right?
Yeah.
Because experimentally, I'll do experiment on this ensemble, and I will, measure if it was in state S, let's say, then what would have been the emission? If it was in state S prime, then what would have been the emissions? And I will sort of average the probability of all of that. That is what will ultimately reflect in my measurement. Okay, so we'll go there. But more questions?
Sir,
Yeah.
you are talking about the states about which we don't know the exact information. That means they are not the like so-called pure states, right? Like they cannot be represented in terms of a wave function. That's why, like, we need this formulation. So what we are doing basically here is we are considering that we have an ensemble where the states there is a certain probability of the system of being in a certain state, and then we are just taking an ensemble average for determining all the means physical properties like expectation values and everything.
Yeah. Okay. So is there a question there?
Yes, I am just trying to clarify if the idea is right or not.
Yeah. Okay. So for now, let's say it is what you said, right? Though you used a term pure and impure states, etc. So if we just throw that out, then whatever you said is what consistent with what I mean.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Any other
And
question?
can you elaborate a bit more about that non-diagonal terms, off-diagonal terms that are called as coherence?
Yeah. So the density matrix, for example, right? So this is a density matrix for the interacting system. That is the most important thing.
Yes.
Right? Because this is built out of CM and CN, and CM and CN were coefficients for the interacting system.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the interacting system need not be in an eigenbasis of the non-interacting system. Right?
Okay.
Because the interacting system will be in a superposition of all eigenstates of the non-interacting system in general.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So if that is the case, then the interacting system can be in simultaneous superposition of two of the non-interacting states.
Okay.
And that will be denoted by the off-diagonal terms of this density matrix.
Okay.
Okay. So what is happening here? I do not know the exact state. I want to find the exact state, right? Okay. So I want to build this house, right? But I need bricks to build it. So what are my bricks? My bricks are the wave functions of the non-interacting Hamiltonian. So I need those bricks basically, right? Now, in terms of those bricks, I have built this whole framework. And in terms of those bricks, now this density matrix need not be diagonal. So it can be off diagonal also. That's all.
Mm-hmm. So basically, that off-diagonal terms are representing the interactions.
They are representing the, yeah, you can say interaction. So yeah, so they are arising from the interactions. Yes, definitely. Okay. If there is no interaction, then you will see that the density matrix will become diagonal.
Yeah.
Right. And you use the term pure and impure, etc. So let me just pull that. So if the density matrix is completely diagonal, then that ensemble is said to be in a pure state. And if the density matrix has off diagonal terms, then the whole ensemble is said to be in an impure state.
Okay.
Just yeah, technical detail actually. Okay. So pure and impure, when we say, we speak in terms of ensemble, let's say. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And that is very useful for quantum information, etc. If some of you, I do not know, are attending the other course taken by Saikat, there you will see a lot of this impure pure states. Okay. Okay. So now one question. Okay. So this density matrix is a matrix, right? Is it an operator? Okay. So I'll leave you with this question. You answer me in a while. Okay. Let's proceed actually. So otherwise I'll run out of time today. Okay. Okay. So this was a bit about density matrix. Okay. So of course, no. So rho mn we calculated or we defined etc. So it's a nice theoretical construct, but what's the use? I can define thousands of things like that, etc. And if it is not useful, then it will just fade away with time, right? Okay. But here we are learning this. Okay. So now let's go back to physical observables, etc. So if I calculate any physical observable, remember that A expectation value over the quantum mechanical state was AMN, the sum over Mn, Cm star Cn, AMN. No, so this we showed explicitly earlier. Okay, and this was when the system was in the S state. We knew precisely that the system is in S state, right? Now suppose I want to write down the ensemble average of this. No, so the system can be in state S, has a probability PS, and if it is in probability state S, then of course this whole thing goes through. No, so the A ensemble average I can write down in this particular form. So sum over S PS, sum over N and M, CS star CN S A M N. Okay, and now you will remember that if I take out this sum outside NM, then just sum over SPS, CMS star CNS was nothing but the density matrix. No, that is what we defined just here, basically. Okay. So in any physical observable, this term appears naturally, and this ensemble average of any physical quantity, I can write in this particular form. So I just put this whole guy into bracket, basically. Nothing, it's just the same statement. And then I can take out the NM sum outside and the S sum inside, and the middle quantity is nothing but rho MN, NM basically. Okay, so the rho NM is always defined where I have a M star and a N without the star, basically. So this you have to remember. So rho MN, C of M star and N without star, basically. Okay, so that's my density matrix. Okay, and then AMN, of course, was the matrix element of the A operator in the M and N, the eigenstate basis of H0. Okay, so that's it basically. So this is rho NM and AMN. So I can write it like, sum over N, sum over M, right? And if I think of sum over M, then this is almost like a matrix product, right? So if I had a matrix, let's say row, double row and double A in this notation, etc. So the matrix comprising of the elements NM, etc. So row 1, 1, row 1, 2, row 1, 3, etc. And similarly A1, 2, A1, 3, and so on. Matrix A, and I multiply those two, then the matrix multiplication just looks like this, no? So row NM, AMN, summed over M, basically. Okay, and then since the first element here is N, so that's the matrix multiplication nth element, and that is summed over N. Okay, and if I have a matrix M and I sum over all of its diagonal elements N, then that is just called the trace, right? So the expectation value, ensemble expectation value of any operator A is given by trace of row A, basically. Okay, so this density matrix becomes the central quantity when I'm trying to calculate the expectation value of any operators. Okay, so the A matrix, any operator in the given basis of NM of H0, I can always calculate. So I know this A matrix given the problem I have for a single atom system. The density matrix I will calculate for the ensemble, considering whatever is the probability, wherever it comes from, quantum statistics, ensemble averaging, all that, etc. And then the final average, which I will observe, which I will measure experimentally, is given by this particular quantity, trace of row A. No? And that's the usefulness of the density matrix. So I've gone from a single atom system to an collection of atom system, which also has in this framework trace of rho A, which also has the possibility to include finite temperature, coupling to the environment, and other things, etc. Okay. So that's the usefulness of this framework, density matrix. Okay. And just to write clearly, so the rho double this notation is just to specify that it's a matrix. The density matrix whose elements are rho Mn. Rho A is the matrix product of rho and A. So I have a matrix, I have another matrix. So there's a fixed rules for multiplying matrix. When I write rho A, I mean the matrix product of these two matrices, which will give me another unique matrix, etc. And rho A, Mn is just the Mn element of the matrix product, which is rho A. And this rho and A is sometimes written in books with a hat, basically. Okay. And I wanted to write in a different notation just to remind you, okay, this is not necessarily an operator. Okay. So this is density matrices or the A matrix in this very specific basis set of M and N eigenstates, actually. Okay. So if you look at Bloyd or any other book, then you'll have this hat rho, hat A, etc. But I just wanted to emphasize the difference that, first of all, rho is not even a quantum mechanical operator. Rho is a density matrix, right? Which has some of its origin lying in classical, let's say, probability. So PS was a classical probability. So rho has some classical element of ensemble theory, etc. built into it. A is completely a quantum mechanical operator. But here, when I write in a rho A, then A is written in this explicit basis. No, A I have converted into a matrix with N and M elements, basically, by taking A sandwich between the eigenstates of H naught, basically. Okay. So this is the second part of my lecture today, which is the introduction to density matrix formalism, basically. Okay. Questions till now? Okay. If no question, then let's proceed, basically. Right. And of course, so we are doing the whole problem like this because we want to connect this density matrix formulation to some of our problem related to light matter interaction, which we solved using perturbation theory, but we can do, other methods also, but I'll use the same density matrix, let's say, etc. Okay. Okay. And to, solve a problem which will have time dependent perturbations, etc., I will need an equation of motion for the density matrix. Okay. Which will be, so in the wave function picture, I could calculate because I had a Schrodinger equation for the operator, a Schrodinger equation for the wave function. So I knew the time evolution of the, so the whole perturbation theory was done in terms of that equation, right? So the Schrodinger equation of the wave function, etc. So, and here in the density matrix picture, I have expectation value of rho A. So I'll need the time dependence of rho, basically. Okay. So I need to calculate the time evolution of the density matrix, which is the last part of today's lecture. Okay. Okay. So let me start with the definition. So rho Mn was just sum over S PS Cm S star Cn. So remember, rho Mn, M comes with a star. The second index comes with a star. The first index doesn't come with a star. Okay. So that you remember. And let me just take a time derivative of this guy. So rho Mn dot. No, that is what we want to find, the time evolution of rho. I just use the chain rule. So the first term, okay, so the first term into Cm, so this product which is missing here, plus PS times this using the chain rule. So CMS star CNS dot plus CMS star dot CN, basically. Okay. So here the product of these two terms is missing. So that's a typo. Okay.
Sir, it should be rho NM or rho MN, rho dot NM, no?
Rho Mn. Yeah. So I just use this. Oh, did I mix my notation? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. So I think you are correct, actually. So it should be rho Mn. Okay. So the second index always has the star. Okay. So let's just check with that. So the second index always has a star. So this is fine. So I did not mix up my index. But the second term, I mixed up the index. So it should be rho Mn. Okay. In equation 1 here, it should be rho Nm. Okay. So in the second line, I have mixed up the index on the left-hand side. Plus, there's another mix-up of this product missing here, actually. Okay. Okay. And then let's assume that, the whole time dependence in the problem was coming from this interaction Hamiltonian. So it will basically come from the time dependence of these wave functions, etc. And PS, the ensemble averaging, let's say probability, etc., is sort of independent of time. So the system is sort of stable, etc., and the only interaction with light or something will change its wave functions, etc. So in that case, you can put this PS dot is equal to 0, and that implies that the first term goes to 0 basically, and the whole time dependence comes from the second term. Okay. Okay. Now second term I can calculate explicitly because CNS dot we already calculated, right? So I wrote down the matrix equation for CMS dot etc. And which is like CMST IH is sum over n HMN CN basically, right? And I can just change the notation from M to N here, etc. And change this. So since this has become N, I cannot use a sum over N. So I use a sum over nu, Hn nu, C nu T, etc. And this I can then just to, take it equal to this term, multiply by this number CMS star. And that's all I have done here basically. So IH I have taken this side. So minus I by H CM star and Hn nu, C nu ST. And similarly, I can take care of the second term. So I knew the equation of motion of CNS or CMS. I can complex conjugate this equation to get the equation of CMS, which is, minus IH, but complex conjugate made it IH, HM nu star, C nu S star. And I did the same trick. I multiply on the left by CNS on both sides. Okay. And then I use the hermiticity of H to write down HM nu star as H nu M. Okay. So that's just the Hermitian property of the Hamiltonian. Okay. So nothing else. The only assumption is that d rho dp by dt is 0, basically. So I did do this.
Sir, what does it tell when we take TP by dt
It
equal
just
to
means
0?
that the ensemble is static in time, basically.
So that means the component of those wave functions means that will be always
That the
static or
probability
same.
that the system will be in state S or S prime is not changing in time.
Okay, okay, yeah.
That just means that, if I had no light matter interaction, then the box of atoms with all, interaction with the box, let's say walls, its own natural pressure and collisions, etc., it is in some sort of a steady state.
Okay, sir.
Right? Yeah. So given that steady state, then I will shine light on it. And then the whole dynamics of the density matrix is coming from the light matter interaction. That's all I mean here. Okay. Okay. So all this algebra I did. So equation 2, equation 3 is just the right hand side of this equation. So I put it back explicitly here. And then you would remember that, sum over S, this product was just the density matrix. So I use that with, using the correct notation. So the second index is star, so rho n nu, and here Cm is star, etc. So rho nu m, basically. So just taking care of the indexes correctly, etc. That's it. And here I had a h nu m, and here I will have a h n nu, basically. And this, when summed over nu, is just the matrix product. No? So rho n nu, h m nu is just the matrix product rho h minus h rho. And if I take this matrix product, I have a nm element because on the right hand side I have the nm element, etc. And that's it. Okay. So this I just put the h on the left side just to become consistent with the notation in the books, etc. So I had IH rho dot is equal to H rho minus rho H. So this is the equation of motion for the density matrix. And just if you want to be a slightly more fancy, you can write it in terms of the commutator. Commutator of the two operators is defined precisely like this. So H rho commutator is H rho minus rho H, basically. So these are not operators now, but these are density or the Hamiltonian matrices. And for matrices also, I define the commutator in the same way. So this is the equation of motion for the density matrix evolution. IH rho dot is equal to H rho commutator. Okay, so this is important, very, very important actually. Okay, and it will play a huge role when we solve the density matrix in the next class explicitly. Okay, okay. The important question is, it looks very much like the Heisenberg equation of motion, right? Anybody recall the Heisenberg equation of motion for an arbitrary operator O, let's say?
Yes, sir. There comes a term of partial time differential, and then this is some.
Okay, so I have a nice way of remembering the Heisenberg equation of motion for operators. No, so I just remember ITO basically, right? Yeah. So if any of you have lived in Delhi, there's a famous place ITO. No, so that's how ITO. So that's how I remember. Okay. Okay. So if I just write that, then this is the, and H of course comes with I. So I dot T of O is just OH. So this is the Heisenberg equation of motion for an operator in quantum mechanics. Okay. So ITO is OH, and here both of them are quantum mechanical operator. And I just wanted to write down this because the density matrix satisfies slightly different equation. Okay, IH rho is equal to H rho. We just proved basically, right? Where these are matrices. Okay, so the equation of motion for a quantum mechanical operator and the density matrix is slightly different in a minus sign in the right hand side. So that you have to remember basically. Okay, because density matrix is not an operator. It comes from the product of the wave functions, etc., and it satisfies a equation which is similar to the Heisenberg equation of motion, but differs with a minus sign. So this is very, very important. Okay, because when I was your age, I used to mix up this minus sign always. Okay, so I wanted to just emphasize this. Okay, so I'll stop here. I do not have anything. Yeah. So next class, we will take this equation of motion for the density matrix. We will start substituting specific forms of H, etc., and see that how do I solve for
You
the.
are missing a row dot here.
Sorry.
You are missing a row dot here, I guess, and the
Yeah, yeah.
equation,
So yeah,
last
yeah. Sorry, sorry.
equation.
So the left hand side is missing the dot. Yeah, yeah. Agreed. So row dot, and here also row dot. Okay. So this row cap I have put in the just to write it in the book notation, etc. Okay. But you have to remember that row hat is not an operator. It's a density matrix basically. And yeah, matrices we can almost think of like operators, but slight difference. Okay. As long as you know what it means, yeah, this that yeah. So just not start putting at the row is the operator. So it have to follow the Schrodinger, Heisenberg equation of motion. As long as you do not do this, you will be fine. Yeah. So I'll stop here and let's take questions.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Sumanta, yeah.
Sir, how the temperature dependence is incorporated in the density matrix?
Not yet, not yet. Okay. Give me some more time. We will come to that.
Okay.
Okay. So okay. But one thing I can tell you already is that you had the density matrix PS, right?
Yeah.
Right. And we know that, from let's say even classical thermodynamics, etc., that an energy state E at a finite temperature T, the probability is likely to be proportional to the Maxwell sort of distribution, no?
Yeah.
E to the power minus ET. So E to the power minus E by KBT, no? So in a thermal equilibrium ensemble, I can already start putting in that.
Okay.
And that's how the temperature dependence will come. So the temperature decides the steady state of the ensemble. And that will reflect in the density matrix. Okay. Yeah. And the density matrix will also include in that probability what kind of an ensemble it is. Meaning fermions, bosons, so quantum statistics, etc. We will inbuilt into it with temperature later. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah.
So rho nm is the density matrix, and multiplication of rho and A matrix. What does this represents? Can you tell me once?
So rho and A expectation value trace will give you the physical observable. So you have to make your question slightly more precise, Subhankar.
No, the above you write that the product of rho matrix and A matrix.
Yeah.
So
Oh, this A bar.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So the A bar is the ensemble average of a quantum mechanical quantity that I will measure.
Okay. And rho is the rho is matrix is the density matrix.
Rho is the density matrix. Yes.
And A matrix.
Oh, A matrix is just the this matrix. Phi M, A, Phi M. M,
Okay.
A, and
Okay.
N. Yeah. A just comes from this. So I know the eigenstates of the, my building blocks. I know the eigenstates of the H naught. In terms of the H naught eigenbasis, I can write down this A matrix.
Okay.
Okay. And if you think back carefully, so the A expectation value always came from A operator, whatever, times 2 of the wave function, no? Because product of the wave function is like probability of finding the particle there, etc. So the density matrix includes 2 of the wave functions product, very broadly.
Okay. Okay, I understand.
Yeah. More questions?
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Anurag, yeah.
Yeah. So here we took dpdt equals 0.
Yeah.
So, but in one of our previous classes, we did an example where there was a time dependence of
Yeah,
exponentially decaying.
correct,
So
correct.
there we cannot apply
Correct.
this one, right?
So I will bring that in the next class, etc. So how dp by dt may not be 0, or how there may be some decay process, etc., which we include in this density matrix formalism. Okay. So all of these physical decay mechanisms come very nicely in this density matrix picture. Okay. We'll do that first thing in the next class tomorrow.